All right. So Jose has been invited, and he is here with us. So we have our SRE counterpart, and will be with us on a regular basis. So thanks for joining, Jose. Good to have you. And then let's jump right into it. So we had goals from last week. So one of the stretch goals was get partition tables into production so we can start comparing performance. And Andreas, you had a comment there.
Yeah, this came out of a discussion I think we had last week where we realized that we got to have a means to manage partitions for the time space partitioning. And if we would just ship it like it is at the moment, then there is a risk for customers that are not going to upgrade beyond the current release, that this is sort of hitting the wall because we're not automatically creating partitions. So I think that was sort of the last step before we can ship that partitioning scheme to production. Unless I'm missing something, Patrick, you have a better take on that.
No, I think I think that was something we want to wait for now that we kind of have identified that.
Okay. Is there something in this issue that we should mark as being a blocker or other things, other issues? You want to do this before we ship? Well, if this is a blocker before we ship to production, is there an issue we need to link in here and mark this as a blocker for that?
No, I don't think there is. I mean, we've been working on the migration helpers for a while, and what is currently missing is sort of the actually shipping a migration that makes use of them. And this should be possible once that issue is finished. I don't think we have a particular issue to create a migration pair.
Well, we had this listed as a stretch goal, so let's mark it as and Pat, you had a couple goals for this week.
Yeah, the third piece is it's in review right now, so I think hopefully it's going to be ready to go in a couple days.
Okay. Jonas and Andreas. So, go ahead.
Yeah, we.
Sorry, go ahead, Andreas.
We generated a data set for 4 years and just came back from running the benchmark over the weekend. The numbers are pretty large for the execution time. So that benchmark takes a pretty long time to execute, even for only a couple of transactions. So there's, I think Yanis, you've been looking into that more, but I think there's quite a good potential. Improving that outside of partition, maybe indexes are missing and stuff like that. So we might have a bit more issues coming out of that.
Yeah, the second bullet for evaluating the benchmark. So we have run generated plans for all the queries and have checked both the two generated data sets that we have created and in production. And from that, we have already identified some issues like a missing index, and we're going to evaluate and finalize the benchmark. I think that we are pretty close, and the most important part there is that we are missing an important index from both production and our environments.
Do we know for these long-running migrations, like if there's a problem where it's still running and someone applies like another update, so just for example, say when we introduce this and the migration starts, but say they're actually like 3 or 4 versions behind, and so they want to go to 13.4, and so they kind of apply these in relatively quick succession and don't wait necessarily for the migrations to complete. Would that be a problem, or?
Yeah, I mean, that would certainly be a problem with the partitioning helpers that we've been working on. That's something we sort of identified as a limitation already, that we can't modify. Like if we're partitioning audit events, we can't modify that table until the migration is complete. So I think that's, yeah, I mean, for the self-managed, that's a coordination problem that we'll probably have to think about a little bit more.
Oh, gotcha. So the table is basically locked. We can't record audit events until it's done.
Well, I mean, at work, you can, you know, the table functions as normally, we just can't structurally modify it because that will break the migration and won't be able to kind of copy the data into the new table at that point. We don't really have a good solution for that. I don't know if there really will be a good solution. For that, we might need to make the migration helpers like more aware of other changes that might impact the database so that they can kind of safely, you know, not clash with one another.
We have I don't want to solution the call here too much, but could we, this is actually a different problem than I was thinking of. So I'll we can up with this in a little bit here, but there's an option where we have like create the new partition table, and then we start sending new audit events there, and then have like a helper which then like lazily just moves all the old stuff over. I don't know, but you all know more than I do there. But my main question was, in the past, we had a bad migration at some point in time, if I recall correctly, that, well, not a bad migration, but there's a migration at some point in time where it took a long time to complete. And if you updated to a newer version of GitLab before it completed, like GitLab crashed. Because I think like the new code was assuming that the migration was done. And so you update to the new code and then bad things happened. I don't recall the exact issue. I recall just the pattern. I think so. I think in some cases, distribution team actually implemented a check to see if certain migrations were complete before allowing you to proceed, but maybe there's a different solution to that problem. I'm not sure.
I think what we typically do with background migrations that take a long time, that the pattern is typically that you schedule jobs for the background migration in one release, and that might spread out over like a couple of days. And then in the next release, you have to schedule another regular migration that makes sure that all those jobs completed, and that you can also assume that you didn't lose any jobs. So basically, in one release, you try to do things nicely and spread it out, and then in the next release, you sort of force it. And most of the time, all those jobs completed anyways. But this is not reliable, so you can't really rely on the fact that a job completes. So you have to check this afterwards. And after that, you're sort of free to, you know, assume that the background migration succeeded.
That makes sense. I did find the issue. I'll just link it here. It might be irrelevant. It's just, I'll just check it in the documentation here.
And you'll also get some customers that jump straight to the second scenario. So they do their upgrades in such a way that the long running migration never occurs, and they go straight to big bang, do them all at once.
Yeah, in that case, we would force the inline execution of the migration.
Yeah.
So just GitLab won't come back up until it's complete, basically, right?
Yeah.
So that the background migrations would normally run as sidekick jobs. So is my understanding correct that it then runs, say, as part of the RPM install? I hadn't clocked that. But
I think it runs during reconfigure, right? Is the one. I could be wrong. I don't know.
I might look into that.
Okay, is there any follow-up item issue that needs to happen for that? Or do we have it pretty well covered?
It sounds like we have the first case covered, Pat, what you mentioned, or we're working on it, or we're thinking about it. So I think that sounds good, which is the fact that like whether or not we can do audit events while we're migrating the content. The other one may or may not be a problem. It sounds like, you know, I linked an issue. I don't know if it's something unique or whatnot, but it sounds like if we do the backward migration and then we do the next release, we do the normal change, it should be fine. The only danger is that if you don't let it finish, your GitLab instance might be down, because I think the non-background migrations happen when GitLab is down. And so if you might have like a 3 or 4 day migration depending on your data size during reconfigure, which might be unexpected.
I think I think we should probably have an issue to look into that, because I think even if you then force the second migration, which would kind of backfill the data in line, then you still have the issue of maybe these sidekick jobs out there that are waiting to run. They're all just going to start failing because now maybe they're not valid anymore. So we should at least, you know, kind of have some checking there to make sure that if we're in a finished state, that like those jobs should exit cleanly and not do anything anymore. So I think, yeah, the short story is we need to have an issue for that.
Yeah, let's look into that.
Who wants to create the issue and follow-up issue for that?
Oh, I can do it.
Okay.
But just noting that it's good that we look into that pattern. But this is a pattern that we have all the time with background migrations. So whenever we have lots of like very large background migrations similar to the size we expect for partitioning, right? Good to look into that, but this is something that we have regularly.
Okay, cool. If it's typical sizes that we do and it's not abnormal, then that's fine. I maybe wasn't aware that we have migrations that run for days. But yeah, cool.
I want to make sure we cover the very important point of Giannis getting a haircut to get rid of the 80s hair. Look sharp.
That was a stretch goal.
Looks good. All right. So what are the goals for this week? Start from the top, Pat.
Yeah, I guess my primary goal right now is just to get the migration helper merged in. Beyond that, I guess I'll have to maybe follow up later. I'm not sure what I'll be working on after that.
Okay. Chris?
I'll be working on the partition management thing. That's the last step before we can release the migration. Also off on Thursday and Friday this week, so only until Wednesday.
Sorry, should I write up a release list item on the partitioned auto events table in hopes that it ships, or do we think it's more of the 13.2?
13.2.
I think
right?
it's. I mean, we're shipping the code for the migration helpers, but it's only going to materialize with the next release. So maybe that's
I'll wait then. Thanks.
Dennis?
Yeah, review everything we have about the benchmark queries in the benchmark and close those issues. And I think that we're pretty close to that. And then I will have to figure out next steps, finalize this milestone and start the next one.
Okay.
I will also be off on Friday.
Okay. Yeah, so let's take a look at the board since we're talking about that. So we have this one issue that's not assigned. Has anybody even started looking at this one? Should we move it off to 13.2 if it's not going to get closed out in the next couple of days because our milestone ends on Wednesday?
I think I looked into that one and asked a question, but I haven't followed up with it. I can. And there is an answer, so I'll look into that. You can assign it to me if you want.
Okay. All right, So running down 13.1. Do we know, Pat, do you feel like this one's going to close?
Yeah, I hope so. I need to follow up on that. That's kind of my fault. I've been working on other things that sidetracked that, but yeah, I'm gonna try to get that merged in.
Okay. I have not done anything with that issue, so I will carry it over if I need to. Andreas, Sharding summary.
That's still pending, and I have it somewhere on my list.
That's a documentation issue. So that's related to the one above that I had. That's just announcing the change. There's not really anything to do there.
Okay. Jonas?
Yeah, the first one, depending on how things are with the benchmark and the artificial generated data set, most probably we will either postpone it for next milestone or we will just backlog it and close it.
Okay.
We will have a response by tomorrow or Wednesday.
Okay.
The second one is pure docs, 5-minute update.
Yep.
And this is the analysis.
Yep.
One, and will be done by the end of the milestone. And the other one is a big MR. It's pending one review from Andreas, and it will be shipped.
Okay. Pat?
Yeah, that one I'm gonna try to get merged in.
Awesome. And then Andreas, you got the last one here.
Yeah, that one is for backend review.
Okay. So it sounds like most everything feels pretty safe for this milestone. Cool. And then random. Do we have any updates for the Sharding working group? I put a quick summary together already. Anything noteworthy y'all want to call out? Take a look if we have any time between meetings. So general questions. Anybody started really using Postgres.ai? I tried using a feature that's not yet available last week.
I finished my setup, and I can now use a pSQL console with the clone, which is really nice, but I haven't yet used it for real.
Oh, so you can pSQL into a clone now? That was the thing I tried to do last week, but it wasn't available.
Yes, perhaps. So I talked with Nikolai last week, and that was sort of the remaining question: is how do we give people access to to port forward the Postgres port? So maybe that's a question for Jose here, since you're on the call as well. Have you had a chance to look into that?
Yeah. What's your question exactly? Like, how can we share the access to Postgres AI, or?
Yes, so that a couple of developers, so they want to basically be able to connect to the Postgres instance that runs on this Postgres AI instance, and that one lives in the GitLab restore project. What I've been doing, but this is only because I have access to the GCP project, is I can just SSH into that instance. And there are two ways forward. One is we give all relevant developers access to GitLab restore project, so they can use OS login, or we just store their SSH keys onto this one instance, so they can just SSH into this one. I'm not sure if there is an open issue for that, but Nikolai and I were just talking last week.
I will follow up with Nikolai, and I will create an issue and put you in copy, you and Craig, okay?
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Let's see. So yeah, a bunch of you mentioned you'll take a look at the backlog to see what to work on next. So planning issues out there. If we missed anything, please feel free to add it. I think partitioning audit events table is our highest priority, and then there's some other issues listed in there. Yep. So workload analysis. If there's anything else from incremental scalability improvements we can grab, it's great. I know there's a lot of interest around the query performance on Select One. I think Andreas is about the only one that started looking at that. But there's a few other items. So take a look afterwards. One thing I wanted to note was that I added the tools that we've created to our Periscope, so it actually starts accounting for those MRs. Last time I looked at this, we only had 2 for the month. Maybe I just didn't refresh, but it's picking up the partitioning tools project in our database namespace now, or database project. So we'll actually start getting visible credit for those MRs as we continue to work on them. And if you're curious how to do that, it's just listed here. There's a snippet that has all of the project IDs. And if you create a new project, you just have to manually add it for it to show up on those. That's it for the agenda. Any other topics folks want to talk about? All right. Yeah, take a look at the Sharding working group document. The MR is in the process of being merged, so we're taking away the title, the word database from the title, so it just focuses on Sharding working group. We can figure out what our path forward is. Next week is the meeting with Sid to talk about the tenant sharding proposal. And I've added into the agenda today to talk about further concerns that we found about foreign data wrappers. So I included the link about Postgres 11 and how performance degrades pretty quickly once you get past about 128 shards, I think it was. And then Andrew's concerns about the number of servers and how it will decrease the SLA. And I know infrastructure had some concerns about foreign data wrappers. I didn't have anything specific there, but Alberto brought up that his team had some concerns about foreign data wrappers. So we'll talk all about that in the sharding working group today. All right, if there's nothing else, see some of you in the next meeting. Thanks.
All right.